7 o'clock on November 12th, 2020. Welcome to the school committee meeting. This meeting is being held virtually through Zoom. The town of Littleton began conducting remote participation / Zoom meetings pursuant to Governor Baker's emergency order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law on March 19th, 2020. Since that time, unanticipated legal concerns relating to the open meeting law have been brought to our attention by the town clerk. Those concerns were supported by the Attorney General's office and confirmed by town council. One concern is that the chat function allows a parallel text conversation to a board's public meeting. Chat is essentially running commentary that is occurring but is not moderated or followed by the chair. All participants and listeners may not be aware of comments being made because some meeting participants join by phone and do not see these conversations. Another concern is conversations between residents within the chat room which are not incorporated into the public record. In response to these concerns, the town will implement the following changes, which in no way prohibit any member of the public from participating in discussion and sharing information during a public meeting, and will ensure that all listeners and participants have equal access to this meeting. People that join the Zoom meeting are set so that their microphones are muted. If you called in by phone, please use *6 to mute or unmute your phone. So that the meeting can occur in an orderly fashion, we ask the people who join keep their microphones on mute so background noises do not interfere with the meeting. If you wish to participate in the meeting, please use the raise your hand function available on Zoom. If you called in by phone, dial *9, which will activate the raise your hand function. The meeting host will notify the chair of the raised hands, and the chair will determine whether and when to allow public comment. When called upon, participants should unmute and state their name and address. After speaking, we request that the participant return their microphone back to mute. All right, having that out of the way, we'll start the meeting with the consent agenda. The minutes from November 5th, 2020, oath to bills and payroll.
I have, so it says at the end, it's probably not a big deal, but it says that I seconded the adjournment and I wasn't there last week.
Anybody remember who seconded that?
I did.
Justin McCarthy seconded that. Okay, so we will make that change.
Unless I was the one who motioned for it.
It says Brad did.
Okay, then we're safe.
Okay. All right. Are there any other changes that we need to make? All right, hearing none, I will entertain a motion for the minutes and the oath to bills and payroll as amended.
I can make the motion for oath to bills and payroll as amended.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. We'll take a roll call vote. Brad?
Brad Austin, yes.
Justin?
Justin McCarthy, yes.
Timmerlin?
Timberland Rassius, yes.
Matt?
Matt Hunt, yes.
And Mike Fontanella votes yes as well. We have at least 2 sections in the meeting reserved for input from interested citizens. One is now at the beginning of the meeting, one closer to the end of the meeting. If there are any interested citizens that would like to speak before the school committee, please use the raise your hand function and we will get you in front of us.
Don't see anyone now.
All right. We are going to move the agenda around a little bit. We only have a couple of items, but we would like to, we've invited Katrina Wilcox-Hagberg. She was able to get a presentation on the most current health metrics, which were released today. So we've invited her to come into the meeting and give us an update on what's going on with all of that. Katrina?
Do you have the slide kit or should I share my screen?
Actually, no, if you could share yours, that would be great.
Okay, give me a minute to reorganize myself.
We have it by email. We'll get it in the packet and online after the fact, but we didn't have time to incorporate it prior.
Oh, this is going to give me trouble today. All right, so I'm going to go fly blind because I can't see my notes. Can you guys see my slides?
Yes, we can see your slides.
Awesome. All right, so I just had a little bit of time to deal with this today. So looking at this, so hopefully this will be a little rough. It's usually a little more polished, but we'll see what we can do. So I do want to start with the state level statistics, just because we are trending similarly as the state does. Like we are part of the state and the state's trending actually rapidly higher. So today there were almost 2,500 cases reported today and 661 hospitalizations. And both of those are increases since last week. The deaths are starting to rise as well, so something to keep an eye on as we go through. And this chart on the side with the total cases by age group, it looks very different from last week, actually. There's a notable increase among 20 to 29-year-olds, whether that's in colleges or young people in the workforce, I don't know. But there's a notable jump in this group compared to others. And then the other large groups are the 0 to 19, 30 to 39, 40 to 49, those kind of groups. The 0 to 19-year-olds actually is a lot of people, so their rate's actually not as high. I can show you that later, but we'll get back to that.
So Katrina, just ask one question about that, please.
Yes.
Although I can't see it now.
Yep, I got to get out of
those are total new cases in those age groups over the 2 weeks that ended last Saturday. Is that correct? Yeah.
So the period that this is total cases in, yes, from October 25th to November 7th.
Okay.
Yep. So this is just the first page of the daily dashboard that the state presents.
Thank you.
Test positivity is also higher this week, so it's 2.9%. So the other thing to note, and this is, I think, really important, is our trend since March. This is the number of new daily confirmed cases since March. And 2 weeks ago when I last presented, I was saying, oh, it looks like we're starting the upward climb. We are, if you start looking at all the little blue spikes, we're going to be fast approaching the same level we were back in April and May. So our state is rapidly increasing. So it's something to be concerned about and keep our eyes on. This is when we graph those cases by age group by their population. So when I take the number of people in each of those groups into consideration, you can see that rapid increase in the 20 to 29-year-olds is here. And then the other age groups who have more cases are the 30 to 39, the 40 to 49, and then the 50 to 59 are hanging out here. So it's not, our kids are down here. It's the orange line. They're lower. So parents, we have an issue. We are being exposed somewhere. And Jim Gareffi mentioned a couple of weeks ago, not this week, but last week during the Board of Health meeting, that it's been an adult who introduces COVID to their family, and then it spreads within the household. So I really want to drive home the fact that us adults need to do the right things and do the best we can when we're at work and out and about, because that's making a difference in our rates. So this is testing for the state. I want you to look at the orange line, which takes out the college, their college tracking, the number of tests they do at all of the colleges and universities around us. So when you look at that, the state itself is around 4 to 5% test positivity. So this is a rapid increase in the last week or so, it's of a concern. So last week, the state changed everything. They reassigned how they're going to color code towns. And they did that in response to the population size and the availability of certain data points. So there's 3 groupings. There's the under 10,000, the 10,000 to 50,000, and over 50,000. So we are not in the over 50,000. Littleton, the other thing they changed is they started using the 2019 denominator estimates, and I can't find those published anywhere in a publicly accessible way. So we are still looking for what denominator they are using for Littleton, but I had enough data points to solve for X, thank goodness for algebra, and I think we're gonna fall in the under 10,000 threshold, which will only use the number of cases. I actually really don't want us to fall in the 10,000 to 50,000, because then it would require some test positivity rate. And right now we're not testing enough of our population to actually rely on this in a way that's useful. So let's hope my algebra skills are still good and that we fall in this under 10,000 group. So assuming that, I changed up how I graphed Littleton just alone. This is the number of cases week over week that Littleton has reported since the beginning of when we started tracking this. So the last time I presented in front of you, we had 12 cases. We were first week in the red. And that was 2 weeks ago. So last week we had a big jump. We had 19 cases. That you can see that puts us, the new thresholds has us in the yellow, but it was significantly higher than the week before. And then this week we have 13 cases in the last 2 weeks. So just about one a day. And given the new thresholds that the state's using, that actually puts us in the green. What I don't want you guys to focus on is green. That's actually not helpful here because we are still more cases than we were 2 weeks ago. We have one more case, it's not a huge jump, but so I'm actually glad we've been tracking our data week after week after week because we can see the trend over time is rising and we're on an upward trend. But so this could be the same little blip as we come down, you know, between the middle of October, we had one little blip down and we came back up, or hopefully it will stay here. Let's hope we can stay here. So you're going to see new colors on any map that comes out, but I don't want anyone to be fooled. Like we still have more cases this week than we did 2 weeks ago. Let's hope that we stay here. Okay. I still think there's value in us continuing to track the trends as we have over the last, well, since mid-August. So I went ahead and did the rates for 100,000 where we can look where we've controlled for our population size and we can compare across areas. So the state is, this week has an average daily case rate of 20.7 per 100,000, and that's higher compared to 2 weeks ago, almost 9 units higher than it was. The state can actually say that they are yellow based on their criteria. Middlesex County is also trending significantly higher, as is the 495 belt. And even our surrounding and border communities have both trended higher in the last 2 weeks. And Littleton had 13 cases and a rate of 9.6 per 100,000. And compared to 2 weeks ago, we were up, but only by 0.7. So better. And the new threshold has us at green. So this is the same graph that I've been tracking week after week. You'll see that I removed the red and yellow, the prior thresholds, because they're no longer hold. And I can't actually put new thresholds on here because every area is different and I can't do it for an aggregated estimate, but this still gives us a trend line. So over the month of October, which we'll start here, you can see that there has been trending upwards, and recently there's been an acceleration, especially at the state level. 495, and this is Middlesex County, are rapidly increasing. Our surrounding communities are also increasing, and our border communities are a little slower, but are trending higher as well. And Littleton, you can see, was trending higher, and then we had a return. We'll see if this continues or if it's just another blip on our track. So I hope it stays. Let's keep staying here by doing the right things. And again, I think there is value comparing us to the towns that surround us. You know that about 3 to 4 weeks ago, I started showing these graphs and talking about how we compare to the communities that surround us, and trying to encourage people to use the layers of protection that are available to us every day and to slow the increase here in Littleton. And remember, 2 weeks ago, I was saying that we were consistently over this black average for our area. And this week, the average for our area increased, but we came down to meet it. So, we are no longer, we're like right in the middle now versus last week, we were the top town with the highest rate of everyone around us. This week, we're at the average. So while I can't say that this is going to continue or not be a blip. We're not going to just continue back higher. What is encouraging to me is that it takes 3 to 4 weeks of a change in behavior to see the reaction in the data. And so, and we've been talking about layering up and Swiss cheese and everything for about 3 to 4 weeks. And so I really hope is that this just doesn't go higher. It's that this will stay where it is or steady so that we can say this is due to our good actions that we've all taken for the last month. So I'm going to cross my fingers, and we'll have to wait for another week of data, but let's hope that we're doing I've seen people do better things, and I'm hoping this continues. So looking at the test positivity, everywhere is trending higher across the state, the county. The 495 belts at 3%. Our surrounding communities are, and Littleton are all between 1 and 1.85%. Littleton's is actually lower this week compared to the last 2 weeks ago. So this is good. This is encouraging that our percent positivity declined. So I'm hoping, again, this is another sign that did we do the right stuff and it's starting to slow our curve, bend our curve down. I'm hopeful. And if everyone can keep, doing the right things, we might see our curve slow. So this is the test positivity week over week. And you can see that everything's kind of trending up, but Littleton had a actually rather substantial dip this week. So let's hope we stay there. So just in general, the state is now yellow, 20.7 this week compared to 3 last week, which is a large jump. And the percent positivity is also trending higher. And the rates and test positivity for Middlesex County, 495 belt surrounding and border communities were also trending higher. And Littleton is green by the new threshold, but don't be fooled. We still had one more case than we did 14 days ago. And our rate this week was 9.6, and our test positivity was lower. So these are good signs that our actions are impacting our data, and we can keep it up to keep our trends lower. And so I'm going to end with my Swiss cheese model. So what's really important that is we care for everyone in our community and our own families. So anytime you're with someone you don't live with or near someone who is COVID positive or symptomatic, it's really important to wear a mask, wash your hands, stay at least 6 feet apart, meet people outside or open doors and windows to improve your ventilation. Smaller groups are really important because it will limit spread. And then take extra precautions around anyone who is at higher risk for severe illness. That's your older relatives, anyone with a comorbidity, things like that. And then this Thanksgiving's coming, and this is a big deal. I think we're going to be talking about it more tonight. There's a real hazard that Thanksgiving could really throw the rates across our state, across New England, across the United States into a rather accelerated increase. So this slide, it has I pulled the information from here from the state's guidance on Thanksgiving, and also the CDC just came out today with an updated guidance on Thanksgiving. But the safest thing to do is to be home for Thanksgiving with those who you live with, or to do a virtual family dinner among those, extended family virtually. So as best you can. And if you do have people in your house, remember that there's a max of 10 people indoors and 25 outdoors per the state's guidelines now. And then do everything, if you have people in your house from outside your household, do everything you can to reduce the risk. So eat outdoors or open your doors and windows for the whole time. Wear a mask the entire time unless you're eating. Separate people as much as you can. Wash your hands when you're eating and when you're cooking, or before you eat and while you're cooking. Keep your visits short. The least amount of time you're with a big group of people, the less likely you would be to transmit or to get COVID. And then if you are going to travel, remember to follow the state's guidelines to quarantine or get tested. And remember, even if you travel within the state, there are differences in risk within the state too. So, and I think most importantly, we need to know when not to go and celebrate Thanksgiving. So if people diagnosed with or have symptoms of or exposed to COVID-19 should not attend any in-person celebrations this year. And then if you're traveling to an area with higher levels of COVID, or someone's coming to you from an area with higher levels of COVID, it would really increase the risk of transmission among family or your attendees to your party. So I'm happy to share this with the schools to send out in the principals' newsletters if that helps at all. I know you're discussing Thanksgiving tonight. And that is it. So main message is we're doing better. I'm hoping this rate stays here, and that all the masking and the limiting our social gatherings and meeting people outside are really helping Littleton's rate change. So we got to keep pushing it so that we don't just accelerate again, just like the rest of the state is. Any questions?
All right. Thank you, Katrina. I appreciate you, very quick, very rapid turnaround. You said it was going to be rough. It wasn't. It was very good, very informative and meaningful. Do any school committee members have any comments or questions based on what we just heard from Katrina?
Just thanks, Katrina. It's very helpful. Definitely gives me a better idea of what's going on. So I appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Same here.
Justin, I was happy to hear you're wearing your mask now. I thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, of course. I was always wearing my mask, by the way, but I'm just doing it more.
Well, you announced it on school committee, so I'm applauding your effort to announce it.
Yeah, you got it.
And those records have been approved officially, so now it's in the record. Katrina, thank you so much for that. I have a couple questions. One is, do these data include all of the post-Halloween stuff? So we're about 12 days out. When do these data close, do you know? So we made decisions, we restricted activities, but it seems like we avoided the spikes that some people were afraid of and think that would come with Halloween. Is that accurate?
No.
No? Okay.
So this is not the full picture of the data post-Halloween. So this data closed November 7th, which would be 1 week post-Halloween. We would need another week to capture effects of Halloween. Mm-hmm. And I know that there are universities, I suspect that I hypothesize that the increase among the 20 to 29-year-olds has to do with Halloween. I think knowing that there were parties and the governor was not happy about it in that age bracket, I think that's probably a driving force in why their rates increased so much in the last week of data that they get captured, and we'll see where they are next week too. But we still have another week before we see the impact of Halloween, the full impact.
Thank you for that. I have one other question. You mentioned the governor. We've heard from him a lot lately about this stuff, and they have new guidelines. How would you, as an epidemiologist, looking at the new guidelines or the new categories, does it make sense to you to change them at this point in the, I don't want to put you on the spot, but I guess I am. At this point in the in the cycle, does it make sense to change how we're doing all these calculations to you?
I think there are pros and cons.
Okay.
I think for towns, we are surrounded by towns who are smaller than us, whose data was really impacted by the old way. Mm-hmm. Littleton's actually at the threshold where it could be okay to do it either way, mm-hmm. the way we were or this way. I think it's unfortunate that we're changing the color scheme right now when, all the messaging that's been going out and the stay at home advisory and the mask order, it muddled the waters a little bit to suddenly go from red to green. I do think, if I understand everything the governor and everything else I've read, that this was in hopes of keeping schools and businesses open longer, specifically schools, because the governor has kept saying that there isn't outbreaks like they expected inside the school buildings, which is great. That said, there are some clusters happening inside of some schools that are reported in their case contact tracking. And I personally think it's too early to say we're not going to have issues inside of schools. The data he's using is a little, it's hard to say that we're not going to have issues in schools, because right now we're dealing with a time where the weather was nicer, the windows are open. We've had hybrid schools, so everyone's further apart, distance-wise inside the school building. Once we start changing those, I can't tell you whether that's going to change the transmission dynamics for us or not. It's concerning that we're getting weather where we have to shut the windows. And I know you guys are checked the HVAC, and we're getting other HEPA filtrations, things like that to improve the situation, which is great. So I think we're still in the watch and see for the impact this is going to have on schools. I do think if what I understand correctly is that there were a lot of schools about to go full remote and they were trying to prevent that, and which is why the thresholds changed. So.
Thank you.
All right. All right. Thank you again, Katrina. Really appreciate it. I'm sure we will hear from you again. In terms of your suggestion about incorporating some of that messaging into things that we can send out from the school system, I think that's a great idea. I think that as part of our discussion tonight on what we're thinking about relative to Thanksgiving, I think we can talk about, how we want to introduce that type of material and where the effort should be made. I think it's a question of, we know it's going to happen. It's just what's the best timing and the best delivery mechanisms and what should the information entail that we send out. But it'll definitely be, very much along the lines, if not exactly what you had contained in this presentation tonight. So thank you for that. All right. And that will segue us into the next agenda item, which is the attestation survey. We asked last meeting, we had a discussion about some possible ideas about what to do around Thanksgiving now that we had decided that we weren't going to go remote reflexively out of that break. We still felt that it was important to try to convey to the community how important we feel it is that everyone make good decisions around how they're going to celebrate the holiday and what the potential impacts are on collectively as a community. But we had an idea about maybe we could do something that would not be as broad as asking everyone to be remote, but if there were certain families that felt they needed to not adhere to the guidelines, that we would have them be remote for some period of time. And we thought that a attestation that would be sent out to the families and required them to fill out. We asked the administration to see what they could put together, and they have a brief presentation to show us what they're thinking about how they would execute on something like that. So at this point, I'll push it to Dr. Schcmte.
Thanks, Mike. We created a few slides to go over with everybody this evening. When we, were developing the attestation form, it was apparent to us that in order to track the forms coming in efficiently and also taking into account our students that took part in extracurricular and co-curricular activities on site, we're going to need to send the form to all families, but only families that have students in a hybrid model or have students or children in extracurricular or co-curricular activities need to fill it out. So we have a summary. The attestation form takes a look at traveling outside of our state into red zones, and also looks at in-person gatherings to strongly encourage that they abide by the guidelines within the governor's order. At this time, I'm going to turn it over to Beth Steele, our Director of Teaching and Learning, to go over the few slides.
Thank you, Dr. Schcmte. Dorothy, could we get those slides up when you have a moment? Awesome, thank you. So the first slide, actually the next slide that you'll see, we wanted to just show you a screenshot of the form that we have created at this point in time. So this is what the form looks like. You'll see it's a Google form. We're all getting pretty familiar with these types of forms at this point. So we have an explanation of what the form is. And then in total, there are 7 questions or statements on the form. So you see here, we ask what your name is, the person filling out the form, first name, last name, what is the name of your child or children. You can fill out one form for your entire family. What school does your child or children attend? Again, it's one form for the whole family, so you can check off multiple schools if that applies to you and your family. You might notice here that we jump from number 4 to number 6. Number 5, the question was, in what grade is your child? Again, you can check off multiple, so if you have multiple children, you're checking off multiple grades that they are in. Number 6, this is where we have the actual statements that we're asking families to certify. And so these come from what was discussed by the school committee at last week's meeting. So the first is we're asking if you certify the following statement, which discusses that during the break, individuals residing in your household will not travel to locations other than low-risk states. We have linked the information off the state's website there. And then number 7, we're asking if you certify the following statement with regard to social gatherings. Again, we have linked the information off the state's website on that one. So those 2 slides show you an overview of what the form actually looks like. On the next slide, we indicate exactly what it means when you're checking off yes or no. So if you're checking off yes, that means that you certify the statements and that the students in your household are able to return to in-person learning the week of November 30th, because you have said that you agree and will abide by the state's guidance. If you are checking off no, or if your family elects to not complete or not submit the form, then the students in that family will not be permitted to participate as in-person learners for, and this is an either case scenario, for either 14 calendar days after school resumes at the end of break, or until the family provides proof of a negative test result for COVID-19 for such students. The test must be administered on or after 3 calendar days have passed following the resumption of school at the end of the break. And so that date that we would be looking at is December 3rd. And until then, so until either the 14 days are up or we have seen a negative test after December 3rd, the students would be able to participate in classes remotely. And then lastly, on the last slide, we're looking at the timeline. And so after discussion, we decided as an administration that what made sense for us is that we could send the form out on Monday, November 16th. And as Dr. Clunchy just said, this form would be sent to all families. However, families that have students that are participating in the hybrid learning model or that have participated in extracurriculars, we would ask all of those families to be completing this form. The deadline to submit the form would be Monday, November 23rd. So that's a Monday to Monday, which provides us time to process the week of Thanksgiving, time to process the responses that we receive. So then just the summary overview of what this all means is that not completing and submitting the form prior to Thanksgiving break, so by November 23rd, or attesting to limit travel, not attesting to limit travel or not attesting to adhere to the guidelines regarding social gatherings would mean that your student would be required to be a remote learner for 2 weeks, which would be until December 14th, or until they provide a negative COVID test result, which the test would have been administered no earlier than December 3rd. So that's the overview and the timeline of what we're looking for with regards to the attestation form.
All right, thank you. At this point, I'd like to ask the school committee if they have any questions or comments or thoughts. Effectively, we need to decide tonight if we want to give direction to the administration to proceed with the way they're suggesting, both in terms of the content of the form and just as importantly, the timing of when it would be put out there and returned by families. So any thoughts, questions, comments? Justin, you can go first this time.
Thanks. I think the survey's fine. I think it's I think it fits the bill. I know we've got a little bit of an audience tonight, and I just want to reiterate that, I think the most important thing here is for people to be honest with their answers. This is already in place. We're just actually not asking you to fill out a survey every week. So if you do have family members that are traveling, I'm looking at a map of the United States right now, and it's everywhere but Washington, Hawaii, and most of New England is considered a high-risk state. So we would typically be asking you to quarantine anyways, we're just making it known and sort of kind of just drawing to everyone's attention that it is the holiday season. It's Thanksgiving. We're asking everyone to make responsible decisions here. So I'm good with it.
All right. Anybody else? Yeah, good, Brett.
Yeah, I would just say thanks to Beth and Kelly, whoever worked on this. I think it looks good, and it certainly does what we ask you to think about doing. I guess my only concern or question would be is if, we're all busy, if people don't get it in, if they forget on that Monday, I understand why we need to have almost all of them in on Monday. I hope that if someone remembers early Tuesday morning and tries to submit something, we can show people a little grace. Maybe we shouldn't advertise that in public meeting, but I do hope that we can accommodate people if they forget something, so there's not almost at least a week in full remote. But I'll leave it to y'all. Y'all know what you have to do to administer it. I'm happy.
Dr. Clench, do you have a thought about that? Should we treat it like a late ballot or not treat it like a late ballot? How do we treat that?
Well, I mean, we'll do what we can to accommodate people if that happens. But I'd like to urge everybody to try to get this in on time. It is going to take us a while to tabulate the data, and we just want to make sure we're on top of what we're trying to accomplish here. It would be far more problematic if families wanted to give us the form the first day back in terms of processing. But I understand we all are busy, and if somebody forgets to hand it in Monday and they want to hand it in Tuesday, that we'll do what we can to accommodate.
Thank you.
Matter Timlin?
I have nothing to add. I'm very happy with the form. I think it'll work out just fine.
I agree.
Okay. All right. I agree as well. We talked about it last week, and really the purpose of this meeting and doing this presentation was to give the administration a week to make sure that this was something they could execute on. Appreciate the quick turnaround. And also, we wanted as a school committee to give the community an opportunity to, having heard it last Thursday, to see if they had any input for us. I didn't receive any, no objections, or nobody, saying what a great idea, the best idea you guys have ever had either, but definitely no objections. So at that point, and given the consensus, I think that we heard tonight, we don't need to take a vote on this. We can just give direction to the administration to proceed. I would echo Brad's point that, if we can accommodate people and then obviously double check that any families that have typically maybe struggled to use online response methodologies, that we're following up with them to make sure that they get the message as well and are able to make the attestation if that's what they want to do, so that their children can continue to be in-person learners if that's what they've chosen to be. That would be great. I know you guys will. I never expect anything differently. Just want to reiterate to the community that that's our expectation as a school committee, that the administration will facilitate that to the extent that they can. We're not looking to punish anyone here. We're not looking to, that's not what we want. What we want is people to basically enthusiastically endorse the idea that, we're going to make the right decisions in order to keep our schools open and as much in-person learning. That's been all of our goals for quite a while now. We've been as successful as we could have hoped for at this point, and maybe even more successful than we maybe had originally anticipated. But we are entering a tricky time. We already know, as Katrina showed us, and we all were very well aware of, the trends are not good in Massachusetts or in the United States. We're definitely going back to where we were back earlier in the spring and early summer, which is unfortunate. But then going into the holiday season and into that time of year where we're going to go indoors, not be able to take advantage of the things we had in the summer when the curve flattened, it's very concerning. So any effort we can make as a community and as a school system, it's very important that we do it. If we do it well, then there's every opportunity we'll be able to continue to move forward in the way we have. If we are not able to do it well, we're going to have to do what we have to do. So hopefully people realize the spirit behind this and will get on enthusiastically and not, be put out by having to do this. But we will try to accommodate everyone that we can and try to minimize the unforeseen impact. We know why we're doing it for the right reasons. If that's what occurs for a particular family, we don't want to penalize anyone just because they didn't quite get the message. That's why we're trying to make every effort to get this message out, and we'll continue to do so. And hopefully it'll go as well as we would hope. So at this point, I think we do have that consensus, and we will give that direction to the administration. So that'll go out this Monday, and then we'll track it as they come in.
Mike, can I ask one clarifying question? I'm sorry, I should have thought of this earlier. Do the guidelines speak to, our guidelines, our attestations speak to Littleton residents traveling out of state or traveling to high-risk areas? Do the guidelines say anything about, the CDC guidelines or mask guidelines say anything about hosting people from out of state? If my family were to come up from Tennessee, does that affect, they're not, by the way, but does that affect, should that be reflected in the attestation, or are we comfortable with how it is?
It's an interesting point. I don't know. I mean, I hadn't thought about that.
I'm sorry, I should have thought about it earlier, but
I have some thoughts on that. I mean, we're trying to parallel this process with the current governor's order, and so we actually did think about that, and we just didn't feel that it was the right thing to do, because we would be waving off what the governor has ordered. I did want to make a statement, though. I mean, I hope this doesn't happen to any of our families, but if somebody has an emergency and they have to travel out of state, we would certainly make any accommodations necessary to help them. And a second point is, if somebody does have to travel out of state into a red area, they're also required to fill out a state attestation form as well. So this doesn't take the need away to fill out that form. They would still have to fill out the state form as well.
thank you.
All right. Dorothy, I think we do see a hand raised for
We do.
public input.
Kevin Davis, please state your name, your street, and your question, please.
Hi, my name is Kevin Davis. I'm at 35 Whitetail Way. To go on to Brad's comment that he just made about people coming in, it kind of, if we're sitting here saying the family, I think the intent of this, and correct me if I'm wrong, was to try to prevent as much of the virus getting into the town. So that's why we're saying if somebody travels out to it, what's the difference between someone traveling out to a state or having somebody come into your house and stay in from a, quote, not allowed state? I don't see the difference. It should be treated as exactly the same.
Thanks, Kevin. Yeah, I mean, thinking about it intellectually, I wouldn't disagree with you. I know I've talked to a couple of families that are thinking about doing some socializing, and what they've explained to me was that they're expecting that the people that come to their house, and these are actually people that are coming from another part of Massachusetts, and not even coming from out of state, but the family that I talked to has, some family members that are a little older, so they want to be as safe as possible. They're all going to test themselves prior to gathering. So I guess my concern is that, it's difficult for us to ascertain exactly what would that mean. Well, how do we know that just having someone from out of state was a problem if they did the right thing and that person tested or quarantined prior to coming? So I don't disagree wholeheartedly. I just think that we're starting to get outside the purview of a school committee's, charge as for what we're trying to do.
So the goal was to try to prevent the virus from getting in if people travel outside, kind of like putting our money where our mouth was what we said last week. And so the whole here is that if you have someone come into your house that is from outside of the town, from a quote red zone area, you're going to be doing the same thing as if you were traveling somewhere out. So that's, I guess, I just don't see the difference.
Yeah. I mean, the issue is there's red zone areas in Massachusetts, and we're not necessarily going down that.
But it wasn't about traveling outside of Massachusetts. It was traveling outside of the state, which is what the attestation was. And there really isn't a difference between someone traveling from, like if my parents came up, traveling from Maryland to here, it's a red zone state. They would be bringing the same risk as if I was going and traveling down to Maryland and coming back.
Yeah, except that if they tested before they came here, that wouldn't be the same risk. If they knew they were negative before they came in, then it wouldn't be the same risk. You being negative going down to Maryland doesn't protect you from contracting in a higher risk area.
Yeah, but then returning to Massachusetts, you still have to test negative coming back. I hear what you're saying,
right?
But it's not. I think it's a whole, and we ought to try to address it.
Yeah,
and also we ought to think about. We also ought to think about some of the college students that are coming back.
Well, see, that's the thing. You know, now we're getting in really deep into the weeds where you're right, there are holes. And this was never meant to be a blanket that could cover every permutation. It's an effort we feel we could make, and it's a fairly reasonable effort in terms of something that as a school district we can do. And I don't disagree with you at all that it's definitely not perfect.
Okay, thanks. Appreciate it.
Yep, thank you, Kevin.
Joanne Derry, please state your name, your street, and your question, please.
Hi, I'm Joanne Deary. I live on Harwood Avenue, and I'm a teacher at the middle school. I just wanted to point out that a negative test result doesn't mean you don't have the virus. It just means it's not detectable in you at the moment that you take the test. And if you've been exposed, it can take up to 14 days for it to become evident and for it to be testable. So you might test negative and test negative and test negative, and then on the 14th day, all of a sudden it reveals itself. So just wanted to point that out.
Yep. Thank you.
ETW9, please state your name, your street, and your question, please.
It's Eileen Gartner in Maple House Road. I'm just wondering why we can't have a basic question that asks people about the level of risk and whether they plan on going somewhere or having people in their household. Like, or being able to change that. Maybe I'm the only one in the town, but I've had family drop in on me from far away places suddenly without knowing it. Like, I guess I don't see the harm in the school asking, is there a level of risk coming in, whether that's people coming to visit you or you going elsewhere. If you're having people in from another state, shouldn't that be something we want to know?
Well, we're not trying to find out exactly what everybody's going to do over Thanksgiving. We felt that there were, and Brad made the point that there are specific guidelines, or Dr. Clenchey rather made the point that there are specific guidelines being issued by the state about what they want people to not do in order to try to minimize the risk of exposure. And it's specifically which states are considered high-risk states to travel to, and what type of social gatherings put you at a higher risk. So there's a lot of good ideas that go beyond that for sure. They're just not codified by the state, and subsequently we don't feel necessarily that we're the right body to say, well, these three things are the right questions to ask, and somebody else might think there was another 5 questions on top of that, or concepts or ways to look at it. So we just went with these broad metrics that are being put out by the state because they're ones everybody's being educated on and being asked to conform to.
Okay, I guess I can appreciate that. It feels like there's an empty hole there, and you can't. I'm not going to worry about it. My kid's not in school right now. All right, whatever.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Eileen. Diane Prunier, please state your name, your question, and your street, please.
Hi, it's Diane Prunier, 26 Boxborough Road. And I first just wanted to say thanks to Katrina for a well put together presentation. It was very informative. So thank you for that. And I also just wanted to have a comment. I don't really have a question, but I just wanted to say good job by all, because I think the form looks great. And I think you were worried about, you said something about you hope it doesn't put people off. I don't think it will put people off at all. For me, I think it looks great. And I think that by putting out there that you're certifying that you'll comply with the rules, and basically that it really does sort of help to keep people accountable, which is, I think, hopefully what your goal is as well. And I know that, for me personally, I'm an honest person anyway, but signing forms anyway, I think just sort of helps to hold people accountable. So thank you guys very much. I think it was very well done.
Thank you, Diane. All
I do
right.
not see any more questions. Chairman Fontanella.
All right, thank you. Thank you, everyone. All right, that actually rolled us right through that part of interested citizens, but I will offer a last call. We knew this was going to be a brief meeting, so this is pretty much it. All right, seeing none. Oh, wait, one more.
Jessica Schoffel, please state your name, your street, and your question, please.
Hi, I'm Jessica Schoffel. I live in Acton on Wampus Ave, and I'm a teacher at Russell Street. I just had 2 follow-up questions about the survey or the attestation form. Would that be for everyone who's in the school, like kids, staff, teachers, everyone, or is it just for families with students? And then my second follow-up question is, I'm just wondering about high schoolers who are 18. Would they fill out the form themselves, or would it be filled out by their parents?
So in regards to your first question, this particular effort is just directed at families of with students who are in-person learners. And then to your second question, Dr. Clenchey, what are we doing with 18-year-olds who have?
Yes, boy, that question's been asked a lot in my career in terms of when students turn 18. We're going to send the forms to the families. They're still living with their families, and they're under their roof, so to speak.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Jessica.
I believe that's all.
Okay. All right, we'll quickly see if there's any subcommittee updates, PMBC.
No update this week.
Okay. Budget.
Yes, Budget Committee had a meeting today. By the way, those meetings are open meetings, so if anybody else wants to come, I guess in 15 years, we've never had a citizen attend a meeting, so all are welcome. Steve's rolling his eyes. But I believe next week we're going to ask to be on the agenda and have some of the capital items presented. And then we've got a schedule set. We're planning on meeting every other week moving forward. So
okay,
more to come next week.
All right, great. Anything from policy?
Nothing from policy, but I do have a quick CPAC update if I can give that.
Yep.
So we had our first kind of official meeting yesterday, was it? And had 12 families represented. It was a good meeting. We got to share about our experiences, some successes, some frustrations with how all of this is going. The interim leadership team is working on bylaws and a website, so we'll be better able to function as a group and to communicate with the community. And we'll have a kind of an organizational meeting in December, but another more parent support group in January. But it was a good meeting, and I think we're off to a good start.
Great, thank you. All right, any other business tonight? All right, hearing
One
none.
more thing. I'm sorry. I
Yes,
meant to say
go
this. Just one more thing about CPAC is that we do have CPAC wants to have 2 school liaisons for each school, and we have school liaisons which we'll be able to publish and announce soon for Shaker Lane and Russell Street. I think we only have 1 for the middle school and don't have any for the high school. So if there are any parents out there who are looking for a way to help other parents, this is a great way to get involved.
All right. I see a hand raised,
You
Dorothy.
do have a- Yes. Eileen W., please state your name and your question, please. Eileen, you're muted.
I'm sorry about that. I know that the governor has been a proponent of getting kids back to school full time. I just have a quick question in regard to what the space issue. I know Littleton did this at one point, but if you had all the kids back in school, what would the space issues look like?
Well, it definitely, yeah, it would definitely be under 6 feet, which was the guidelines that we used when we determined what the best way to do a hybrid model was. At this point, we have not, even though the governor has put out and the commissioner of the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education have both put out some messaging indicating that they would like to see school districts be more aggressive about the number of students they have as in-person learners. At this point, they haven't really demanded anything. They're just kind of trying to strongly encourage. But at the end of the day, those decisions are local decisions. And at the moment, we don't feel that we feel comfortable trying to be more aggressive about how many kids we have in the building at this particular moment in time. That's not to say that we wouldn't reevaluate it at some point, but if we did, it would be on our own direction, not specifically in reaction to the current level of encouragement from the state government officials.
That's a very diplomatic way of putting it. So, thank you. If they did do that, would that change so if the state did put pressure on schools, I'm sorry, let me take that back. I'm not gonna worry about it now. Thank you.
No, I mean, your point is valid, Eileen. The only way to do it would be to go to less than 6 feet. There's just no, I mean, we could conceivably get a few more kids in the building if we looked and still maintain the 6 feet, but it would be a few. It wouldn't be twice as many. It wouldn't even be 20% as many. It would be more like maybe 2-3% more. So to try to do more would mean we would have to go to less than 6 feet. Whether or not that's a good idea or a bad idea, you know, that's.
Yeah, I'm not trying to press you. I'm just wondering based on them what we're thinking about. But I appreciate where you're coming from.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you. All right.
Okay.
All right.
I believe that's it.
All right. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Okay, this time Timlin did second it.
He
Please
did.
note that. All right, I'll take a roll call vote. Brad,
Austin, yes.
Matt,
Matt Hunt, yes.
Timlin,
Timlin Rassius, yes.
Justin,
Justin McCarthy, yes.
and Mike Fontanella votes yes as well. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Dorothy and Bettina, and Dave and Judy from LCTV. See you guys all next week.
Yes, thank you.